Today we're going to talk about how our childhood wounds, how the pain that we might have had in childhood, or the trends or the habits of the way we were raised can actually directly affect how we live and love in our everyday lives. My name is Michelle. Let's talk about how you can live unapologetically in love and life. So before we were born, really we were living in a great state of bliss. We didn't have to do much, and everything that we needed was taken care of without us having to prove ourselves. But at the moment of birth, things change. Things aren't so instant and effortless. And the problem is that no matter how well-intentioned our families are, no one could possibly know what we want at every minute of every day. So as an infant who's crying, they don't know if we have a gas pain, if we're hungry, if we have a headache, if we have an itch somewhere. They just have no idea. So even the most well-intentioned families can't be at our beck and call and know everything that we need at every second. So even if you had the best parents, you're still learning that not all of your needs are always going to be met. This is a really hard lesson to learn early on in life. As we grow, as we evolve, we have to learn how to fit into whatever society that we are living in. And we have to start learning how to fit in. And I'm not just talking about how to fit into our family. I'm talking about your skin color, your religion, your gender, what city, state, country, region you live in. And we have to learn how to fit into whatever dynamic that we are born into. We're actually taught very early on what kind of talents and skills and behaviors are acceptable, not acceptable, which ones get us attention, which ones make us feel humiliated. And so we learn very early on to repress certain parts of ourselves and to really try to work harder at other parts of ourselves. None of this is actually really in our truth. Our truth is whatever we are, we should just be. So we're learning very early on different types of dynamics that will help us to feel more accepted in whatever society and unit that we happen to be in. You probably had unspoken rules or actual verbal rules that it's okay to feel or do or think a certain way, and it was wrong to think, do, or feel another way. So even if you felt that way inside, or even if you were exhibiting certain behaviors outside of the home, a lot of your life was spent in the home where you were actually trying to fit the mold of what someone else thought. Now, all of this really is important for your relationships, especially your romantic relationships, because the person that you were with had to go through the same thing, and it was probably very different. Even if you have a lot of similarities, maybe you grew up in the same town and you're the same religion and you went to the same schools, even if you had all of that, you still had these unspoken, indirect messages in your home life that were very different. So you're coming into this relationship, both of you, not really able to present your true self because you just haven't practiced it. And so as you get more and more comfortable in that relationship, and as you try to bring more of your true self out, the other person might actually become very, very nervous about that and try to calm it down. So for instance, say you have always been a little overweight and you suddenly started working out and watching what you eat, maybe your partner suddenly is becoming jealous and nervous because that dynamic is now shifting. There's something new happening in the relationship. And because many families don't like anything new, they like things the same, you might have both learned that having something different in the relationship means unstable. People always see change as instability rather than emerging into a space of growth. So also, if you had any kind of a dysfunctional upbringing, you might have learned that in order to get love, you have to be over the top a certain way in order to get attention. So you might be bringing that into the relationship where you feel like you have to really prove yourself in order to get love. Your partner might be feeling the same way, or your partner might not have had much love, and then maybe he has this tough guy persona where he has to act like he doesn't really need anything. And then when you try to give him love, he's awkward about it because he just doesn't know what to do with it. It's not that he's rejecting you, it's just that he truly hasn't developed that dynamic of accepting love. So a lot of times when you're in a relationship with someone and there's a problem and a struggle, it's not that the other person is rejecting you. It's not that you're actually rejecting the other person. Most of the time, both people really want that relationship, but they just don't know how to get there because the childhood wounds are still very deep and they haven't actually healed. They just have a scab over top of them. If you can approach yourself and your partner with compassion, understanding that most of the struggles that you have are probably coming from those childhood wounds, it makes it so much easier to be able to have conversations about how you grew up, what was acceptable, what wasn't acceptable. Really start having conversations about what did you love as a child. So I'm going to give you some tips right now that you can use in your relationship. Ask your partner, what are some things that they feared as they were growing up? And you also talk about things that you feared growing up. And don't just talk about, I feared thunderstorms, but really, why did you feel thunderstorms? Were you not hugged when there was lightning or thunder? Really go into detail about what you truly feared. Did you fear expressing yourself? Did you fear maybe singing out loud because somebody would have laughed at you? Did you fear getting a bad grade because somebody would have hit you or would have told you were stupid? Really talk about what you feared in your childhood. Talk about specific incidents of your childhood. Understand if your partner does not feel comfortable being vulnerable, they probably won't love this exercise. You can just say, hey, this is an exercise I want to share of myself. If you want to share something, great, but I would love for you to listen and just have a conversation with me about it. Because even in a cathartic manner, them just talking about your fears is going to be helpful and boost intimacy in your relationship. Just because something works for you doesn't mean it has to work in the same way for the other person. Also, when you're talking about these fears, talk about what triggers your fears now in your day-to-day life. Maybe what your partner does actually triggers fears that are actually rooted in childhood. So it's a trigger that they're doing, not actually something hurtful that they mean to do. Triggers are really extraneous and they don't really mean that this person is doing it on purpose. So having that discussion will actually help them feel less on target. Really having that conversation about childhood wounds, the fears that you had in childhood, the specific incidents that maybe you never brought up before. And trust me, when you start to have this conversation, depending on how deep you go with it, you will probably start to get a lot of different memories that are surfacing that really do show you how you get triggered in your day-to-day life and how you might be putting up walls because you don't want to be hurt, because you don't want to be rejected. And as you do this, you and your partner, if they are open to this, even listening to you, are going to be closer. And the closer and more accepted you are, the less these triggers have power and the more your childhood wounds actually begin to heal. I have another video for you. Please subscribe and I'll talk to you very soon.